What? This can't be right. There must be some mistake.
I am 75 years old, and my hands shake as I tell this story, not from age alone, but from the night my life split open. My wife, Cecilia, is 82 now. We have been married for 51 years, long enough to believe secrets sink quietly into the floorboards. I was wrong. The most shocking moment came on a quiet Sunday afternoon when a stranger knocked on my door and asked for the son my wife had hidden from me. I remember the way the light behind him turned his face into a shadow, and how my heart knew before my mind did that something sacred had been broken. I am a retired army man. For decades, duty pulled me away for months at a time. I told myself my sacrifices were for my family, for Cecilia. I believed love was patient, that distance was survivable. That day, standing in my own doorway, I realized patience can rot when it is starved of truth. The man said his name was Victor. He said he was the father of a boy who should have been mine. He said he would go to the media if we did not talk. Then he handed me an envelope with photos I could not unsee. A few minutes into this story, I want to ask you something simple. Please tell me in the comments where you're watching from today. Maybe knowing I'm not alone will steady me as I keep going. I didn't open the envelope right away. I sat down at our kitchen table, the same one where Cecilia used to iron my uniforms, and waited for her to come home from her walk. When she did, she froze. She saw the stranger's car pulling away. She saw the envelope in my hand. Her shoulders sagged like a confession. I asked one question. "Who is Victor?" She didn't answer. Silence became the loudest betrayal of my life. As she cried, memories rose like ghosts. I remembered our early years, how we met in a small town outside Fort Bragg, how her laugh filled rooms and made absences feel shorter. I remembered letters she wrote while I was deployed, ink smudged with longing. I never imagined those long months could turn into loneliness sharp enough to cut vows. I never imagined a friend could whisper poison into my marriage, telling my wife that attention mattered more than truth. Cecilia finally spoke. She said she was lonely. She said a friend named Marlene convinced her that a harmless comfort would never be discovered. She said it happened once, then again, until consequences had a heartbeat. She said the boy was grown now, living a life built on a lie. As she spoke, I felt myself shrink. The house felt too big for grief and too small for rage. I opened the envelope. The photos showed a young man with my eyes and not my blood. There were dates, messages, threats. Victor wanted recognition. He wanted control. He wanted to force a truth that Cecilia had buried to protect what she loved or what she feared losing. I realized betrayal doesn't always come dressed as cruelty. Sometimes it wears the face of panic and calls itself protection. That night I slept in the guest room. The walls listened. I stared at the ceiling and replayed my life like a campaign map, marking where I had been and where I had failed to see. I thought about the army teaching me to read terrain, to anticipate ambushes. I had never learned how to guard a marriage from silence. I wondered if my absence had been a kind of permission, if duty had blinded me to the cost of neglect. By morning, the phone rang. It was Victor again. He spoke calmly, like a man negotiating terms. He said time was running out. He said secrets make good headlines. I hung up and realized the war I knew how to fight had followed me home. The question was not whether the truth would come out, but who it would destroy first. And as I walked back into the kitchen and saw Cecilia praying with trembling hands, I understood this was only the beginning. I tried to remember the man I was trained to be under pressure. Breathe, assess, decide. But this battlefield was intimate. Every object carried history. The clock ticked like a judge. Cecilia looked smaller, older, as if guilt had aged her overnight. She reached for my hand and I pulled away, not in anger but in fear of shattering what little strength I had left. I asked her why she never told me. She said she was afraid of losing me, afraid I would see the child as proof that she failed as a wife. Hearing that hurt more than the affair, because it told me she did not trust the love we built. I stepped outside and watched birds argue over crumbs. Life went on with cruel normalcy. Neighbors waved. No one knew my world was cracking. I thought about the boy, a man now, raised without the truth of where he came from. I thought about Victor's hunger for control and Marlene's whispered encouragements, the way betrayal often needs an audience to feel justified. I realized every choice had ripples, and ours were finally reaching shore. When I returned inside, Cecilia was holding a small box. Inside were letters she never sent, apologies she practiced alone. She said she wanted peace in old age. I wanted honesty before peace. We stood there, two aging people with a lifetime between us, knowing that the next conversation could end us or save us. Then my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number, a single line that made my knees weaken. "He's on his way to see you tonight." I did not know which door would open first, forgiveness or ruin. Only that night would decide everything for us both without mercy now. By the time evening crept in, the house felt like it was holding its breath. I kept checking the windows, half expecting Victor to appear like a ghost demanding recognition. Cecilia sat on the couch, hands folded, eyes swollen from crying. We had lived in this family home for decades, raised children, celebrated holidays, buried parents. Now it felt like a courtroom waiting for a verdict. I asked her to tell me everything, not the softened version, not the version meant to spare my feelings, everything. She nodded slowly, like someone walking toward punishment they had delayed for years. She told me about the loneliness first, about the long months when I was overseas, when letters came late and phone calls were rushed. She said she tried to be strong, but strength, when stretched too long, can snap quietly. That was when Marlene entered our lives more deeply. Marlene was her friend from church, always smiling, always listening. The kind of friend who nods at your pain and then tells you that you deserve more. Marlene said I was wasting my life waiting, Cecilia whispered. She said a woman still alive should feel wanted. I felt anger rise, sharp and sudden, not just at Cecilia, but at the friend who planted those seeds. I had seen Marlene laugh with us at barbecues, pray beside us on Sundays. Betrayal rarely looks like an enemy. Sometimes it looks like a shoulder to cry on. Cecilia said the affair didn't feel like passion. It felt like silence being filled. Victor was charming, attentive, persistent. He made promises that meant nothing but sounded like rescue. When she found out she was pregnant, fear swallowed everything else. Victor wanted the child. Marlene told her it would ruin her marriage, destroy the family, end her life as she knew it. So she chose secrecy, believing one lie could protect a lifetime of truth. The child was born quietly. Victor agreed to stay away in exchange for money and silence. Cecilia told herself it was finished, that the past could be buried deep enough to never breathe again. Years passed. I retired. We grew older. She thought she had escaped the consequences. But secrets don't die, she said, tears streaming. They wait. I stood up and walked to the hallway where our family photos hung, our wedding picture, our children's graduations, smiling faces that didn't know the full story. I realized then that betrayal isn't just an act. It's a long shadow that stretches over innocent years. The knock came just after dusk. My chest tightened. I opened the door and there he was. Victor looked older than the photos but confident, like a man who believed he held the winning card. He stepped inside without being invited. He talked about the media, about justice, about his right as a father. He said the boy wanted answers. He said silence was no longer acceptable. I asked him why now. He smiled and said, because people listen when you're desperate. I told him to leave. He laughed and said he'd be back with or without cameras. When the door closed behind him, Cecilia collapsed into sobs. I felt something break inside me, not violently but completely. Trust doesn't shatter all at once. It erodes until there's nothing left to stand on. That night I didn't sleep. I thought about confrontation, about walking away, about exposing everything myself before someone else could weaponize it. I also thought about the boy, caught between adults who made selfish choices long before he had a say. I wondered if he hated us, or if he was just curious about the life he never knew. In the early hours of the morning, I made a decision. I would not let Victor control the story. I would face the truth head-on, even if it destroyed what remained of my marriage. I told Cecilia we needed to talk to our children, to set boundaries, to stop running. She looked terrified, but for the first time, she didn't argue. Before the sun came up, my phone buzzed again. A message from Marlene, just 3 words: "I warned you." That was when I understood the manipulation wasn't over. It had only changed faces. "Now I want to hear from you. What would you have done if you were in my position? Would you protect the past or confront it no matter the cost? And please tell me, where are you watching from today? Share your thoughts in the comments." The morning after Victor's visit, the house felt unfamiliar, like we were guests walking through a life that no longer belonged to us. Cecilia moved slowly, as if each step carried the weight of 40 years of silence. I brewed coffee we barely touched. The decision I made in the dark hours of the night still sat heavy in my chest, but it also gave me something I hadn't felt since the knock on the door: direction. I called our children first, not all at once, one by one. I asked them to come over that evening, said it was important. I didn't explain more than that. When I hung up the phone, Cecilia looked at me with panic in her eyes. She asked if there was still another way. I told her the only way left was forward. While we waited, I confronted Marlene. I drove to her house alone. The ride felt longer than it was, memories replaying like accusations. When she opened the door, she smiled, the same warm smile that once made me trust her. I asked her why she encouraged my wife to lie. Her smile faded. She said she was only trying to help. She said Cecilia was unhappy, neglected, invisible. Then she said something that cut deeper than anything else. "You left her alone," she said. "Someone had to be there." I wanted to shout. I wanted to list every sacrifice, every mile, every sleepless night spent believing I was protecting my family. But I realized arguing with someone who justifies betrayal is like shouting into the wind. I told her to stay out of our lives. She shrugged, like she'd already moved on. That was when I understood manipulation doesn't need remorse to survive. It just needs opportunity. Back home, Cecilia confessed there was more. Victor hadn't just returned out of nowhere. He had found the boy, told him fragments of the truth, enough to spark anger and curiosity. The boy wanted answers. Victor wanted leverage. Cecilia wanted time. No one wanted peace. Our children arrived just before sunset. They sat in the living room, confused, sensing the tension. I told the story slowly, carefully, choosing honesty over comfort. Cecilia cried openly. Our daughter stared at the floor. Our son clenched his jaw, anger flickering across his face like a storm. When I finished, silence fell. Then our son stood up and asked one question: "Is he my brother?" Cecilia nodded. The weight of that word, brother, changed everything. It wasn't just about a marriage anymore. It was about blood, identity, and a young man who had been denied the truth of where he came from. Our daughter finally spoke, her voice shaking. She said she felt betrayed, not just by the affair, but by the years of pretending. She asked how many moments were built on lies. I didn't have answers that could heal them. I only had responsibility. I told them we would face this together, that we would set boundaries with Victor, that no one would be forced into the spotlight against their will. I also said something that surprised even me. I said forgiveness would take time, and it might not look like staying the same. Later that night, Victor called again. I put him on speaker. I told him we were prepared to acknowledge the truth privately and legally, but we would not be threatened. He laughed and said the boy deserved more than paperwork. He deserved recognition. He deserved his story told. That was when Cecilia found her voice. She stepped forward and told Victor he would not control her anymore. She said she would tell the boy herself in her own words with boundaries. She said if Victor went to the media, she would tell the whole truth, including how he agreed to disappear when it suited him. The line went quiet. After the call ended, I looked at my wife and saw a woman who had lived too long in fear finally stand up to it. It didn't erase the past. It didn't fix the hurt, but it shifted the balance. The next day the boy came. A young man with cautious eyes and a guarded posture. He didn't look like me, but he carried the same uncertainty I once felt as a young soldier sent far from home. Cecilia apologized through tears. She told him the truth without excuses. He listened without interrupting. When she finished, he asked if she loved him. She said yes. Always, he nodded, processing a lifetime in minutes. He didn't stay long. He said he needed time. As he left, he looked at me and thanked me for listening. That gratitude humbled me more than any apology could have. That night, I sat alone on the porch, thinking about the cost of silence and the courage of truth. I realized peace in old age doesn't come from hiding mistakes. It comes from facing them with dignity and boundaries. Now I want to ask you, what would you have done if you were in Cecilia's place? Would you have told the truth earlier, even if it meant losing everything? Or would fear have guided you too? Have you ever seen something like this happen in real life? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments. The days after the boys' visit were quiet in a way that felt earned, not forced. Not peaceful yet, but honest. Cecilia and I moved around each other carefully, like two people learning how to live in a house that had been rebuilt with different walls. At our age, change feels heavier. Every adjustment reminds you that time is limited, and regrets are stubborn companions. Victor didn't call again. I don't know if it was fear, pride, or the realization that control slips away when truth is no longer hidden. What I do know is that boundaries work best when they are firm and spoken clearly. I wrote him a letter, simple and direct. Any further contact would go through a lawyer. Any attempt to threaten our family would be documented. I mailed it without waiting for Cecilia's approval. For the first time in years, I led with clarity instead of accommodation. Cecilia started therapy. At first, she resisted, saying she was too old to reopen wounds. But I reminded her that wounds left untouched never truly heal, they only harden. She came home from her first session exhausted but lighter. She told me she finally said the words she'd been afraid to admit out loud, that her greatest regret wasn't the affair itself, but believing she had to carry it alone. That loneliness, not desire, was the real enemy. Our children came around more often. Conversations were awkward at first, careful and restrained. Then they became real. Our son admitted his anger wasn't just about betrayal, it was about feeling foolish for never seeing the cracks. Our daughter admitted she was afraid her own marriage might carry hidden truths. We talked, sometimes late into the night, sometimes through tears. Healing didn't arrive all at once. It came in pieces. The boy reached out a week later. He didn't call me his father, and I didn't expect him to. He said he appreciated the honesty. He said he needed time to decide what role, if any, we would play in his life. I told him there was no pressure, only an open door. When the call ended, Cecilia cried again, but this time there was relief mixed with the pain. Truth had given everyone room to breathe. As for our marriage, we didn't pretend everything was suddenly fine. Trust at 75 is rebuilt slower than at 25. We set boundaries. We spoke plainly. We stopped avoiding hard conversations. I told Cecilia that forgiveness didn't mean forgetting and staying didn't mean excusing. She told me love didn't mean silence and fear should never guide decisions again. Those words became our new vows, spoken without ceremony but with weight. I've spent my life believing strength meant endurance, holding on, pushing through, staying quiet for the greater good. Now I understand something I wish I'd learned earlier. Real strength is honesty, even when it costs you comfort. Especially then. If there is any advice I can give to the younger ones listening, it's this. Don't let loneliness make decisions for you. Don't let fear convince you that lies are protection. And don't wait until old age to say the truth you could have spoken when it mattered most. Time doesn't erase regret. Courage does. I am 75 years old, telling a story that still hurts but no longer owns me. Cecilia is 82, learning that peace doesn't come from hiding the past but from facing it with dignity and boundaries. Our ending isn't perfect, but it is real, and at this stage of life, that is enough. Now I'll leave you with this. Have you ever experienced betrayal like this, either as the one hurt or the one who made the mistake? What would you have done differently in our place? Share your story and your thoughts in the comments.